In the movie, Silver Linings Playbook, Pat is a man who has lost everything. His wife, his job, and his sense of self-respect and grounding in the world because he has just been released from a hospitalization for psychiatric problems. He's no longer that young, as many of us are not, and he's living with his parents who could endure all of this if he would just participate in the family obsession with the Philadelphia Eagles. You need to make time for your family, no matter what happens in your life, Pat says. The only thing is, for his family, that time is a very odd and ritualized way that they watch football together. Now each year, as Sally said to us in the announcement, we have our annual services auction called ServU, and at that auction each year, we auction off an opportunity for some lucky winner to suggest a sermon topic that the ministers must then wrestle with. Michele Carroll, the illustrious vice president of our board, was the winner this past year, and I must say that she actually probably earned a sprinting title for the speed with which she moved from her position on the other side of the Borton Hall towards me when it was announced that she was the winner. She rushed over to tell me that the topic that I would be wrestling with this year was, in fact, football. Now, integrity is very important in ministry. So I want to come clean about this. I realize that among us today there are two camps of extremism, which I suspect is each having its own reaction to the statement I just made. To those of you who are saying yes to the idea that we are going to be talking this morning about football as a sermon topic, I need to come forward and tell you that my own true lack of interest in football has disappointed people in my life since my birth, which is appropriate to say on my birthday. My father, very much hoping that his firstborn would be, in fact, a boy, bought a large football. And there are many pictures of me in those first days of life lying next to this never again to be seen object. Luckily, we do have other assets on the ministry team, Renoir, if you consider the New England Patriots as a legitimate team. I know where we are, let's just say that, I'm aware. Or, though he also could not be with us this morning, if you want to put the multicultural spin on it, we have Australian rules football with David Usher. Now, to honor the other camp, the camp of those who are saying, what? To the idea of football as a sermon topic, I need to admit that my son was the one with the Dallas Cowboys hat on. It happens in the best of families. I was actually in the what camp when Michele told me what the chosen topic was. I had a whole year to prepare for this, I need to say. What can we learn from football? I think I may have actually asked her when she told me this. It's a sport that we all know, particularly the professional kind, has some downsides. As one blogger put it in a post called The Spirituality of Football, because, you know, in this day and age we can find a post about any topic. Football. You have adult men, twice my size, wearing shiny outfits with sparkling helmets. And these enormous men can be observed throwing themselves at each other, almost guaranteeing themselves future discomfort and possibly serious brain damage, following rules that seem to make no sense, especially to someone who did not grow up with the game. And the entire course of affairs is overseen by an apparently godlike figure dressed like a zebra who makes decisions that cause thousands of people to yell at their televisions. Apparently, he goes on, this zebra-clad demigod has long-range powers of hearing and cares what American viewers think. Oh yeah, he says, and I'm one of those yelling people. Weird. Now you notice that I am not one of the people wearing the team jersey today. But this blogger inspired me. Because you know, this idea of making decisions that cause many, many people to yell and scream has a certain resonance with ministry as well. We're almost there. Now, I might have expressed some initial skepticism to Michele. But she immediately pointed out that the sport actually earns a loyalty generation after generation, which most religions no longer see. What can we learn, she asked, about how to get people enthusiastic about who we are and what we believe in? How can we actually use what they do with football to be that religion that goes everywhere like sunlight? Those were good questions. And even better ones arose when, months later, I was able to actually sit down and have lunch with Michele and hear her story about being a Steelers fan as a kid and how she shared this with her dad and her family. Football, you see, was the glue over the years, and it held despite many changes and a move all the way over to the left coast. It survived changing loyalties. She became a 49ers fan, passing the family obsession on to her family, and on and on. Through all of this, football was the thread of resilience. Resilience through affiliation. You know, we used to live in a world where people were desperate to belong to something. And now we live in a world where people are not sure that they need to or trust belonging to anything. In an age when we can join lots of online groups and not be as troubled by the irritations and annoyances of real people interacting in real time, how is our sense of even needing to be together felt? Why go to the mall even when all those pesky others will be there with their automobiles taking your parking space, when you can mail order from the comfort of your home? Why join a league when we can not only bowl alone, we can actually bowl virtually on our phone without even needing a relationship with a real bowling ball, because you know you could drop those on your foot and they're dangerous. Do we really need each other? Do we really need anything outside of our own small spheres of influence? Well, yes, I believe we do. Because we all have those times when we feel as if we've been drop-kicked through the goalpost of life. And in those times, we need to be loyal to something larger than ourselves, to principles or practices that we support and that support us in those harder times. For what we do support over time supports us when we need it. I think we all have our own version of this. What is it that holds that place for you? What is it that you and yours do in the way that Michele and her tribe watch football? For me, it's planting and growing things. For my created family, it's cooking and eating together. We do this in good times and in glad times, and there have been years when we did it with that same kind of grim determination that fans use when they watch their teams lose game after game in some years. Now, I was a latchkey kid before there was such a thing. My mother was off to work when she needed to go back before dawn, and my sister and I were getting our own breakfast. And she was an early adapter, my mom. She tried to invent the toaster muffin. She made very flat muffins that she thought we could put in the toaster after she was gone, and we would warm them up, and then they would come out, and we would have a warm breakfast, even though she had to go to work. That worked all very well for the first couple of days, and a couple of days in, the toaster caught on fire. And I think it was the memory of those flames leaping out of the toaster and licking the sides of the kitchen cabinets that made me adamant that my family sits down together for breakfast, and preferably for a cooked breakfast. And almost every morning, we do. Now, just like watching football when your team is having a bad season, this does not always seem rewarding in the moment. In the particular rhythm of my life, especially in the last few years, I am often multitasking over breakfast and have been known to devote a little bit more time than I need to feeding the dogs or watering the plants, so that it is not unknown for there to be browned, and some might even call it blackened, quality to my son's breakfast. When he complained to his sister about this, she countered that when she was a teen and he was a toddler, I would often be moving so fast that I would undercook things, and that she had eaten many a gooey-centered pancake without complaint because it was what we do. And it is. It's what we do. Most of the time, it's actually quite wonderful. My children are often great cooks, and we have meals together because cooking has been my act of love for people since I was very young. I have the secret hope that someday I will watch a grandchild of mine eat an inadequately prepared breakfast because one of their parents, my kid, cares too much about the world to always pay attention. These are small acts, rituals really, of affiliation, but they can make us brave, and sports might be the best outlet for the excesses of affiliation we can need when life is hard. Michele Carroll is a very generous person. Those who know her know that. And so one day last month, after a fairly long day, I was one of a small group nested in her big, large, generous sofa to watch The Sharps War, which is a PBS documentary about a Unitarian Universalist couple who rescued Jewish children during the Nazi era. And at the very beginning of that film, there is some stark footage. And it's of young soldiers goose-stepping and saluting. And here we see the need for affiliation, the need for being in a group gone terribly, terribly awry. It's that same spirit, I believe, that those who are striking out in anger in our nation today have, feeling as if the dead-end realities of their economic lives are best resolved by returning to another era when power was more closely held by only certain segments of our society. That image from that film, intended really just to set the scene for the story of the Sharps, is the one that keeps coming back to me. Those young men in Germany who needed something to feel proud of, something to lift them above an existence in which they had been starved of hope and opportunity. Now, Daniel James Brown has written a book. It's called The Boys in the Boat, and it chronicles another episode in the Nazi era. His is the story of the University of Washington crew team, which rose out of poverty to go on to defeat the Nazi team in the 1936 Olympics. And the narrative revolves around one character, one man on that team, it's a true story, Joe, who found in rowing a sense of purpose which overcame the many, many ways he had felt disempowered in his life, including being abandoned by his family at a very young age because they couldn't afford to feed him and feed the younger children. After the Washington boys defeat the team that the Nazis had hoped would demonstrate and show the world their absolute superiority, Joe spends the night reflecting. And this is what Brown writes. In the last desperate few hundred meters of the race, in the searing pain and bewildering noise of that final furious sprint, there had come a single moment where Joe realized with a startling clarity that there was nothing more that he could do to win the race beyond what he was doing. except one thing. He could finally abandon all doubt and trust absolutely and without reservation that he and the boy in front of him and the boys behind him would all do precisely what they needed to do as a team in precisely the moments when they needed to do it. Rowing and that team were the threads of resistance for Joe. So I invite you to think today, what is yours? What is yours and what is that of those you love? Okay, I can see the footballers getting restless. We've gone away from the topic. But in the movie Invincible, Vince Papale, this is based on a true story, is a lifelong Eagles fan who spends his free time playing dirt lot football with his friends and teaching part-time and generally not amounting to much, which is certainly the way his wife sees it. Finally, she gets fed up and she leaves him. And he's at the bottom and he has so little to lose that when, as a publicity stunt, a new Eagles coach calls for open tryouts, anyone in the city can try out and be part of this professional team. He decides to try out. He is ancient at age 30. Something that today I'd prefer not to think about. But he makes it. And his victory is the victory of all those barely making it in the no-win economy in which they are all living. Now, my family's dear friend Tony grew up in another hardworking town, Detroit, and it was hard work and football scholarships that were his path out of the Italian ghetto where he lived. And he was a lifelong, rabid football fan. He told me once that football lets us take our wins and our losses. It gives us a simpler arithmetic. We're all going to have losses, we know that. And we need something to remind us to stay in the game, whether it's food or friendship or animals or music, something. Whatever we truly love deserves our relentless loyalty. Whatever sustains us, we will be called on to sustain at some point. Why Vince is such a great fan, just like Michele and her family, is that they stick with their team no matter what. In good seasons, yes, but in bad seasons as well. No matter what mistakes the players make or the coaches, they always give them another shot. Whether the team wins or loses, no matter what's going on in their lives, no matter whether every play a coach designs is the one the people want to see, no matter whether every player catches every pass, no matter if other people think they're sort of stupid for staying with the team, they stay. By sticking with the team sticks with them. And in the movie, when Vince's friends are forced out on a strike, which puts their precarious lot in an even more precarious position, they can still gather at the bar after picketing and talk about football. When relationships end, when there isn't a job in sight, when life seems particularly hopeless. Which brings us to the 12th Man phenomenon. This is a gender-exclusive term, but it refers to the fans of teams in 11 on-a-side sports games, particularly American football. And it honors the fact that many observers know that it's that 12th that will determine a team's success or failure, the fans. And in the movie Invincible, the reason the new coach wants to hold the open tryouts at all is that a stunning losing streak has drained almost all the support away from the team, and he knows he cannot win without fan support. So yes, football is a chance to have food and beverage you might normally deny yourself. And it's a chance to kick back and get fully absorbed in something outside your daily cares. I have not ever been really I'm a social football game attender. But for a little while, when I was a college student, there was this player who happened to be playing for the University of North Carolina in the years I was there. His name was Michael Jordan. And we had a couple really good years. And I remember what it was like to hang from the rafters and really feel like you were part of something that was happening. And sometimes a person like Colin Kaepernick comes along and tries to use the spotlight of fame to draw attention to a larger issue, such as the systemic oppression and destruction of Black lives in our systems. And he reminds us that sometimes it's more complicated. Our loyalties conflict. As someone who occasionally burns breakfast understands all too well. We all want to live in a world shaped by our highest aspirations and in the spirit of our deepest resiliencies, where people choose to connect with their neighbors even if they don't understand exactly where they're coming from. Where because you're a long-term fan of democracy, you vote rather than boycott because your favorite quarterback was traded away. Where if your family isn't what you need, you make your own. Where when your dreams seem to have died, you dare to dream again. Even in those moments when you feel like you've been drop-kicked pretty hard through the goalposts of life. So today we gather here to celebrate resiliency and those moments when we choose to be the essential 12th on the team of 11. When we stayed at the table rooting for the team and continued to plant and support growth. We come because we are that place that affirms that despite the inevitable losing streaks in life or the occasionally heartbreaking loss, the periods of drought, the discordant times, no matter which cards you are dealt in the world's worst hand, no matter how low you may seem in the draft of life, no matter how many fumbles you may make or those you love may make, your life matters. We are here to stick it out for the team through good times and through harder times, connecting to what matters and willing to be that extra cheering body that encourages us all towards the world we want. May we be the ones to make it so.